So related to, Diao and Halley, to some regard, vis-a-vis appropriation, was Philip Taaffe. Philip Taaffe and Peter Schuyff were kind of grouped together when they first came along because both of them showed with Pat Hearn Gallery. And when I first was living in the East Village, Pat Hearn Gallery was on Avenue B, around 6th or 7th Street, and it was a ground level gallery. Pat Hearn had a kind of post-punk look. Later, she presented herself, in this beautiful woman, very refined. But when she was in this Avenue B space, it had a glass block window facade, very eccentric. And then you entered, there was a white tile floor, and there was a cactus garden with these cactuses growing out of kind of a sand landscape garden inside the gallery. And her program was kind of neo-surrealism. It was she who introduced George Condo, Terry Chevenier, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, a couple of other artists that were kind of working in this territory of neo-expressionism with specific subject matter that was a little bit kitsch. And Pat Hearn had this extreme, like, kind of Catwoman type makeup, looking more like somebody from the music scene than the art scene. But when she started to show Peter Schuyff and Philip Taaffe, both of those were painters that used geometric language in very specific ways and came to be called Neo-Geo. In the case of Schuyff, he both depicted these kind of biomorphic forms that were neo-surrealist. They had a kind of trompe l'oeil effect of looking as if light is falling on a surface, so the geometry kind of becomes a kind of implied illusionistic relief. But later on, his paintings were more pure geometry, where he worked using acrylic washes so that they had these insane kind of systems where, one color would then be one color plus a wash, one color plus two washes, one color plus three washes, and they moved through these chromatic sequences. So there were affinities to, say, Albers or other people who had worked with kind of, color and chroma, but in this case, it was toward kind of neo-op. They related to works that would have been in the Responsive Eye show at MoMA, for example, Bridget Riley. And it was also Bridget Riley, the British hard-edge geometric painter of the 1960s, that Philip Taaffe was early identified with, because he appropriated her paintings that had these, undulating contours. And what Taaffe did was use a methodology where he essentially made paintings through collaging their surfaces with this very thin kind of rice paper. So he would make templates based on other painters. Bridget Riley was one. And then in printing or painting on the paper and then affixing it on canvas, he got this really beautiful painterly effect where color had transparency, where the physical edge of a form could be read like a Matisse cutout, where you had this art historical referencing where it literally seemed as if the source painting had become a template for something that could follow, and that could follow a kind of constructive language of its own accord. So Taaffe wasn't really an appropriationist in the same vein as, say, Sherry Levine or Mike Bidlow or Richard Prince, where it was about sort of stealing or rupturing the idea of authorship or ownership or originality. It more had to do with ways of re-seeing something and recontextualizing something in a current moment by taking the kind of physical, literal apparatus and remaking that in a new way as a new form of painting. Pat Hearn moved from Avenue B to a space between Avenue C and D that was sort of the latter chapter of the East Village galleries. she had had a lot of success with her artists and had the money to build this gallery that was a beautiful gallery. It was as if it was Castelli Gallery in terms of its scale. It had a clear story lighting in the back, and yet it was across from the most bombed out vacant lot that you could possibly imagine. So there was this kind of shocking radicality of location that you would walk almost to Avenue D, which had been really kind of like the forbidden zone. You know, it used to be like Dante's Circles of Hell. You know, there'd be Avenue A, B, C, D, and each would be incrementally, you know, more scary and more bombed out. So when the galleries actually got east of Avenue B, they were in this kind of incredible territory. Another gallery that moved over there at that time was PPOW, in the space that had been the 8BC Club. But Pat Hearn, you walked through these doors on this street into this incredible gallery space, hardwood floral, this kind of thing. And that's where Philip Taaffe did this mind-blowing show that was entirely comprised of paintings based on Barnett Newman paintings. And these paintings, you know, Newman had titled them with titles such as Concordia and so forth, but they were done to scale. And using this kind of block printing technique, Taaffe made these motifs that were the Newman zips, but they were coils of rope coming down over these huge uninflected fields of color. And for me, at age 25 or however old I was encountering them, it really opened my mind up to the possibilities of what was happening in painting, where suddenly all of these historical references could move into the present tense in this way that was so radical and yet devotional at the same time.